Jimin's intervention. As Karen continued her verbal assault, Jimin and the other members of BTS, who were in the market for a fan meeting, noticed the scene from afar. As they heard the rising tension, Jimin, with his usual calm and compassionate demeanor, turned to his members. "I need to step in," Jimin said firmly. RM nodded in agreement. "Let's make sure this doesn't get worse." They approached the checkout area, and Jimin, with his gentle but assertive voice, called out to Karen, "Excuse me, ma'am, that's enough." The words cut through the air like a calm breeze, silencing the murmurs in the market. Karen froze. The atmosphere shifted instantly. All eyes were now on Jimin and the members of BTS. Jimin walked up to Karen, his voice unwavering but gentle. "You're being disrespectful," Jimin said, his tone calm yet firm. "This young man is doing his best. You don't get to treat him like this." Karen, clearly taken aback by Jimin's unexpected intervention, stammered, "Who do you think you are to tell me how to behave?" Jimin smiled, not an ounce of hostility in his expression. "I'm someone who believes in kindness and respect, and I don't think you've shown either." The other BTS members standing by Jimin nodded in silent support. RM, Suga, and Jungkook made eye contact with the surrounding customers, showing solidarity with Jimin's message. Peter, still standing behind the counter, looked up, confused but overwhelmed with a sense of relief. For the first time that day, he didn't feel so alone. Jimin gently turned to Peter, his voice soft and encouraging. "You're doing a great job, Peter. Don't let anyone make you feel less than you are." Peter's eyes welled with tears as he nodded, the weight of the situation lifting off his shoulders. Jimin placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, his calm presence a stark contrast to the tension that had filled the air moments before. As the members of BTS left the store, the mood in the market had changed. What started as a humiliating moment had transformed into a display of kindness, and the customers, now inspired, began to speak up in support of Peter. By the time Jimin and the group left, the market was no longer just a place of commerce. It had become a community. "Oh my God, did you see that? He can't even hold a bag. How pathetic." Karen's words echoed through the store, and some customers in line shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke up. What none of them knew was that someone else had been silently observing everything. What happened next left everyone speechless. Karen crossed her arms, staring at Peter with a look of impatience and disdain. "Someone has to do something about this," she said loudly, making sure everyone heard. "This is ridiculous. I don't have all day to deal with incompetence." A murmur ran through the line. Some people looked away uncomfortably, but no one said anything. Noticing the lack of intervention, Karen grew bolder. She took a step toward the counter and pointed her finger directly at Peter. "Can you even do something as simple as bagging a purchase?" she sneered. "Who hired you? Was it out of pity?" Peter stood frozen. Karen's words cut deeply. His hands trembled as he tried to focus on his task. He tried to ignore her, but the memories from his childhood hit him like a punch to the chest. He remembered his stepfather shouting at him, "You'll never do anything right. You're a burden." Karen smiled mockingly at his reaction. "Look at this," she said, pointing at him with disdain. "He can't even hold a bag." Peter swallowed hard, a lump forming in his throat. I just want to help," he whispered to himself, his voice barely audible. Karen leaned in even closer with a cruel smile. "Someone needs to teach you how to do a real job. You're holding everyone up." Her voice rang out in the store, and now the attention of the shoppers wasn't on their purchases, but on the scene unfolding before them. Some shifted uncomfortably, while others murmured softly. A couple of people pulled out their phones to record. Peter tried to explain himself, but the words got stuck in his throat. His eyes filled with tears, but he fought to hold them back. The humiliation was unbearable. Suddenly, the scene was interrupted by the sound of firm, determined footsteps approaching the counter. Karen stopped talking and turned, surprised by the interruption. The entire market fell into an uncomfortable silence. The hum of the registers and the murmur of the shoppers seemed to fade away. All eyes were now fixed on the figure advancing toward the counter. As the man approached, some customers began to recognize him. "It's him," someone whispered from the line. Karen, still trying to maintain her composure, crossed her arms dramatically. "This is an insult to my time," she exclaimed, raising her voice. I can't believe I have to tolerate this. The shoppers exchanged uncomfortable glances. An elderly woman at the end of the line leaned toward her husband and whispered, "Isn't anyone going to do something? That poor boy looks so lost." The man hesitated, unsure, not wanting to cause trouble. The tension in the air was unbearable. Karen, completely oblivious to the discomfort of the others, continued her tirade. "This is the kind of service we're paying for? It's unacceptable." Some people avoided looking at her, while others glanced toward the figure approaching. Then, a calm yet firm voice cut through the silence. "Enough." The words echoed in the store like a resounding wave. Karen froze. The shoppers turned their heads almost in unison. Standing at the counter with an air of authority and calm was none other than Jimin. The atmosphere shifted in an instant. His presence was unmistakable. The entire market held its breath. Some customers pulled out their phones, sensing something important was about to happen. A woman in the line leaned toward her companion and whispered softly, "This is awful, but who's going to stop her?" Her companion shrugged nervously. "She's very aggressive. I don't want to get involved," she whispered back, uneasy. At the end of the line, an elderly woman adjusted her purse and took a hesitant step forward. Her eyes filled with sympathy as they fell on Peter. But she hesitated. The weight of the situation caused her to stop. Meanwhile, Karen, encouraged by the passivity of the customers, continued her attack. "If you can't do this job, go do something else," Karen declared loudly, making sure everyone heard. "Someone needs to tell you this." Peter's breathing became labored. His chest rose and fell rapidly as he struggled to maintain control. His hands shook and sweat ran down his forehead. He kept his gaze fixed on the counter, avoiding Karen's cold stare. On the other side of the store, Jack, the manager, finally noticed the commotion. He frowned and started walking toward the checkout, but a customer stopped him to ask for help, delaying his approach. Karen, with her arms crossed, turned to the other customers. "You see this?" she asked dramatically, pointing at Peter. "We're all wasting time because of him. It's ridiculous that someone like him works at a fast checkout." The murmurs in the line grew louder, and the discomfort became almost unbearable. Near the aisles between the shelves, a man silently observed the scene. He was dressed simply in a white shirt and dark jeans. He might have blended in with the crowd if not for his calm posture and determined gaze. He analyzed the situation with an unreadable expression, as if he had seen something like this before. Peter, still focused on his task, didn't notice his presence, though he felt a subtle shift in the air. Something was about to happen. Karen, completely absorbed in her fury, continued her tirade. "This is unacceptable," she shouted, emphasizing each word to make sure everyone heard. The tension in the market was palpable. The atmosphere was on the verge of exploding. Then the man stepped forward. His movements were deliberate, not rushed, but with an authority that didn't go unnoticed. The customers in line began to murmur, sensing that something important was about to happen. Peter, still focused on the counter, lifted his gaze for a moment and met the man's eyes. His expression wasn't one of judgment or pity, but of confidence and determination. Karen continued raising her voice, but suddenly a calm yet firm voice broke through the air. "Enough!" The words resonated through the market, silencing the uncomfortable murmurs instantly. All eyes turned toward the man who had spoken. Karen froze. The shoppers turned their heads almost in unison. Standing at the counter, exuding an air of authority, was none other than Jimin. The atmosphere shifted instantly. His presence was unmistakable. A hint of nervousness crept into Karen's voice as she said, "Are you going to tell me how to act?" Jimin stopped just a few steps away from her and locked eyes with Karen. His expression was calm but imposing. "I'm not telling you how to act," Jimin said in a serene but firm tone. "I'm telling you that what you're doing is wrong." His voice rang through the store like a hammer strike. Karen blinked, taken aback. "Well, he doesn't even know what's going on here. I'm just telling the truth. This kid is holding everyone up." Jimin let out a small smile, but the intensity in his eyes never wavered. "The truth? The truth is he's doing his job, and you've chosen to humiliate him for it. There's a big difference between telling the truth and using it as a weapon." The murmurs among the customers grew louder, but this time the attention shifted from Peter to Karen. Peter, frozen behind the counter, looked at Jimin with wide, uncertain eyes. He didn't understand why the man had stepped in, but a wave of relief washed over him. Finally, someone had defended him. Jimin approached Peter, his expression softening. "What's your name?" he asked in a warm yet firm tone. Peter swallowed hard, his voice trembling as he replied, "Peter." Jimin nodded, a gentle hand resting on Peter's shoulder as if to share some of his confidence. "Peter, you're doing a great job here. Don't let anyone make you think otherwise. We all have tough days, but those days don't define us. Do you understand?" Peter nodded slowly, his eyes filled with tears. He couldn't find the words to respond, but the crushing weight he had felt moments before now seemed a little lighter. Karen, visibly uncomfortable, crossed her arms and let out a nervous laugh. "Look, I don't know who you think you are, but this has nothing to do with you. I just want quick service, and it's clear this kid doesn't measure up." Jimin turned toward her, his expression becoming more serious. "I'm someone who believes in respect. It costs nothing to be kind, but clearly you've forgotten that." Karen scoffed with a mocking laugh, though her voice no longer had the strength it once did. "I have the right to be frustrated. I'm wasting my time here." Jimin nodded slightly. "You have every right to feel frustrated, but you don't have the right to take it out on someone who hasn't done anything to deserve it, especially someone who's just here to help." There was a moment of silence, and then a woman in the line, emboldened by Jimin's words, spoke up. "He's right. It's not fair to treat this young man like that." Another customer, closer to Karen, chimed in, "We're all waiting in line and no one else is complaining. What makes you think you're different?" The murmurs of support for Jimin and Peter spread through the crowd. Karen looked around, hoping for someone to back her up, but all she found were disapproving glances. Some customers even continued recording with their phones. The energy in the market completely shifted. What had been a scene of humiliation turned into an act of solidarity. Before leaving, Jimin turned to Peter and gave him a reassuring smile. "Stay true to who you are, that's more than enough." As Jimin left the market, the customers broke into applause. Peter stood behind the counter, still processing everything that had just happened. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he mattered. The echo of Karen's heels faded as she stormed out through the automatic doors. The brief silence she left was soon replaced by the conversations of the customers. "She had no right to speak to him like that," commented an elderly woman to her neighbor. "That was incredible," replied another customer, still in awe. "I never imagined someone like Jimin would show up here." Meanwhile, Peter remained still, staring at his hands as if trying to comprehend how a moment of humiliation had turned into something so powerful. Jack, the store manager, finally approached and placed a hand on Peter's shoulder. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice filled with genuine concern. Peter lifted his gaze and smiled weakly. "Yeah, I'm okay," he replied, but there was something different in his voice, a quiet confidence he hadn't had before. Jimin's words still resonated in his mind. "Your worth isn't measured by how fast you bag the items. What matters is who you are." Taking a deep breath, Peter returned to his work, feeling the weight he'd been carrying for so long lift just a little bit. The customers in line began treating him differently. A woman handed him her items with a warm smile. "You're doing a great job, Peter. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." An older man, as he paid for his purchase, added, "Hey son, keep it up. You have more value than a lot of people out there." Small but sincere gestures slowly began to rebuild Peter's self-esteem. Across the market, the atmosphere had completely changed. The customers were chatting with each other, many praising Peter or marveling at the power of small acts of kindness. A young woman, still holding her phone, approached Jack. "That was amazing. Did you see how Jimin handled it? You should post this on social media. People need to know how incredible Peter is." Jack smiled and nodded, looking over at Peter, who now worked with newfound confidence. The market was no longer just a place of business. It had become a symbol of hope and unity, where a simple act of kindness had made all the difference. "I agree," said Jimin with a firm voice. "But now the most important thing is making sure he knows it." In an instant, the market stopped feeling like a store and became a community. Strangers who had been silently waiting in line moments ago now chatted like old friends, united by what they had just witnessed. When Peter's shift finally ended, he walked slowly to the break room. He sat down on a wooden bench, looked at his uniform, and mentally replayed the events of the day. For so long, he had felt invisible, as if people only saw his mistakes and differences. But today, something had changed. Jimin's words echoed in his mind, sparking a sense of pride he didn't know he had. For the first time, he felt truly valuable. Peter began to believe the words his mother had said that morning, reminding him how important he was to his family. Now he was finally starting to feel valuable outside of the market. Meanwhile, Jimin walked calmly toward a parked car. He wasn't looking for recognition or applause. It had just been another moment of doing the right thing. Before getting into the car, he stopped and took one last look at the market. A small smile crept across his face. He knew this moment wasn't about him, it was about Peter. It was about showing how one act of kindness and empathy could change not just the course of a day, but perhaps even a life. The impact of that day went beyond what anyone had imagined. The next morning, the video of Jimin defending Peter went viral. Millions of people worldwide shared it, and hashtags like #ShareRespectForPeter and #DignityMatters trended. Social media was flooded with debates about the importance of treating others with dignity. The customers who had been in the market shared their testimonies, inspiring others to reflect on the power of small actions. Peter, who had once feared attention, had become a symbol of resilience and strength. The narrator of the story concluded with a heartfelt reminder: every day we have the opportunity to be kind, to lift others up instead of tearing them down. A small gesture can have a profound impact. In the end, we all share the responsibility to build a world where respect and empathy are the norm, not the exception. The next morning, when Peter headed to work, everything felt different. The cruel thoughts that had once weighed him down had been replaced with the encouragement and support he'd received the day before. With every step, he felt lighter. When he entered the market, the customers at the counter greeted him with sincere smiles. "You're doing a great job, Peter," said one woman. "We're lucky to have you here," added another customer. Peter returned the smile, his heart full of gratitude. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he belonged. And in that moment, he knew with certainty that he mattered.